Now we're moving on to verb tense. Verb tense is a very complex topic. The SAT, however, often tests only a small piece of that directly. I've been struggling with trying to figure out how to teach this, like how much detail to go in with this. I think I'm just going to give you a general breakdown of tense overall, so that you're not confused, not only for the SAT, but in general. Just realize that when you're doing practice problems, certain tense issues are going to come up again and again and again, and those are the ones to look out for and recognize. A lot of what I'm going to say now is not going to be tested directly. I just want to give you the foundation. It might be too much, I don't know, or it might be really helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments, if this is too much, or if you need more, or if this is helpful. Okay, so tense. The one thing I want to say right off the bat about tense is the rule of tense is an agreement rule. And it's basically all the tenses in a sentence should either match or be consistent with each other in a particular logical way. So for instance, if there's an SAT sentence that they give you something like when John was ill, he eats rice. There's an issue here, right? Because we have was, which is past tense, and eats, which is present tense, and it seems to be that there's some sort of incongruity here, right? And let's pretend in an SAT problem, let's pretend this eats was underlined. Well, eats would be wrong because was is not underlined and it's past tense. So basically, you look at the non-underlined portion of a sentence or other hints of a sentence, such as if you see something like 3 years ago, that implies past tense, right? So you look at the ununderlined portion of a sentence and you say, okay, what is the tense of that part? And anything that's underlined must match up or at least be consistent with it. I don't want to say match totally because, as you're going to see, there's some wrinkles here. Alright, so let's do the breakdown of tenses. There are, I think, 12 tenses in the English language? Yeah, 12 tenses in the English language, at least. So I'm going to give you the breakdown of how to think about tenses. And tense is going to be, obviously, when something happens in time. But there are different layers and levels of time, how something happens in time. And English really gives us an interesting ability to mess around with when things are happening. So let's start with the easiest, and that's present tense. And that's what we're all familiar with and what we've been pretty much using so far. And that's something that's happening now. So he walks, I eat, and so on. Now, the thing that happens in the past, we're going to call the simple past, is just going to be the simple past version, usually adding plus ed, though in some cases you've got particular simple past forms. So in this case it would be he walked or I ate. Now it's not I eated, it's I ate, because this is kind of an irregular form of the verb. But most of the time you're adding ed to get that simple past form. Other times you're going to have this irregular form. And as English speakers, we're pretty good at this. We have really no problem with most verbs figuring out the simple past. For the future tense, there's no, unlike in other languages you might do, like Spanish I think is this way, you don't change the verb at all, the verb itself, to denote future. You usually use things like will or going to. So I will walk. So I will walk. I am going to walk. Right, so you've got, these are what's called auxiliary, did I spell that right? I hope so. Or helping verbs. And these are verbs that go with certain other words, which we're going to talk about in a second, to fill out the tense. So in this case, it's future tense, so it's going to be I will, or I'm going to, and here are your auxiliaries. And we're going to talk much more about auxiliaries in a second, because they're going to come up with other forms of the tense. Now, these are the simplest forms of the tenses that you're going to see. I'm not going to talk much about future in this video because they don't really test future that much. I will talk about will versus would in a second. But for now, I just want to focus on the simple and the present tense, things happening in the past or things happening now. Okay, so those are the simple and past forms. Now, if you're dealing with a specific date or a specific time, you're going to use simple past. And I'm saying that because it's going to matter in a little bit. Now, there's what's called continuous versions of these. All of these. There's present continuous, future continuous, which I'll just briefly mention, and past continuous, or simple past continuous. And this means an action is happening in the moment. Right? It's happening currently, presently. So something like I eat can become I am eating. What this is a helping verb or an auxiliary plus what's called the present participle. And we're going to talk about in another video participles. So basically they are your verb with an ing on it. This is different from a gerund, which is the noun version of a verb. I will again talk about that in a later video. You can see how this gets confusing, but stick with me. So I am eating. So I'm doing that right now. I am eating. What would the past continuous version be? Well, it would be I was eating. Right? I was eating. At one point I was eating at a period of time. And these are used in various ways. I mean, sometimes they're interchangeable or not. It depends on what you're trying to say in a sentence. It depends on how you're trying to coordinate. Usually you use the continuous version of verbs when you want to show kind of the synchronicity or things happening at the same time, right? I am eating and I am watching TV, or I was eating when he arrived. You want to use the continuous form generally to show things happening at the same time or show the order of events, something like that. For the purposes of the SAT, you're generally going to recognize when they use the continuous incorrectly, just because it's going to be pretty easy to tell by ear. Oh, for future continuous, it will be I will be eating. But again, we don't so much care about the future tense. All right, so that's continuous. Now, another version is called the perfect. So we have the present perfect, another tense, present perfect, future perfect, and past perfect. And so let's talk about the past perfect first, because that one appears the most in the SAT and it's the most important. So let me highlight that in this green. In fact, let me highlight the tenses so far that are really the ones you need to worry about. So past perfect, present, simple present, and simple past are really the most important ones. So what does past perfect do? Well, there's a lot of potential functions for past perfect, but its main function is to show the order of things in the past. So if I say something like, when John had finished eating, he paid the bill. Now, what this this is not a great example. I really should come up with a better one. But what this shows is an order, right? First, John finished eating, then he paid the bill. So notice we have had finished as our verb here, and the present perfect generally, or the past perfect, goes like this. It goes, you know, your verb, your noun, plus what's called the past participle. Sorry, that comes. There's that. Plus the auxiliary helping verb, usually a version of have, and the past participle, which is usually the verb ending in ed, or a totally different form altogether, especially of the past tense, a simple past. So another example, after John had something, the lake, he swam in the river. So, right? So this shows the order of things, right? After John had blank the lake, so we know he's swimming in it, he swam in the river. What is this? Is it had swam? No, because the past participle of swam is swum. Now this is one of those examples where it's a little bit more confusing. So after John had swum in the lake, he swam in the river. So, what is the point here? The point is that you use had plus the past participle to denote something happening before something else. And we're going to see examples of that in questions. This doesn't come up too often. A lot of times they abuse it rather than use it correctly, but just be aware that it is on the SAT and it's pretty important. Okay. Present perfect doesn't show up as much in the SAT, but it can. It is usually formed like this. Let's do this. Visited France 3 times. Here it's an auxiliary, present tense auxiliary. I should put past tense auxiliary. A present auxiliary plus past participle. Past participle. That's not really helpful. Past participle. Now, when you use the present perfect versus the simple past is a whole thing. Generally, you use the simple past to denote a specific event that begun and ended in time, usually with a specific date or time in mind. You use the present perfect for 2 reasons. Either to denote something that's happened in the past in a kind of unclear or unimportant or unstated period of time. So in this case, I have visited France 3 times. It doesn't really matter when specifically those 3 times were. I'm just saying that I have, at some point visited France 3 times. And another way the present perfect is used is to note something that has happened in the past and has happened either up to now or has some sort of effect on me now. So something like, I have studied for 1 month implies that that's going to have some kind of effect on, I have studied for 1 month, comma, and I think I'm ready for the test, right? That past action kind of is moving back into the future. Another example would be, I have worked for McDonald's for 1 year. Right? This implies that I've worked for McDonald's for a year and I'm still working there now. Okay? Again, present perfect is not as important as, say, past perfect, or certainly as simple past or present tense, but it is up there. You might see it. Often they will use this incorrectly. If you ever have a specific time, like last month, I have visited France, for instance, that's incorrect because you have a specific time, so you use simple past. All right, future perfect, not going to come up much. Something like, I will have visited France 3 times. Right, so I will have visited. So it's your auxiliary, will, plus another auxiliary, plus past participle. We don't really need to care much about this because it's just not really important for the SAT. All right, so we've done 3, 6, 9. There's one more, and I'm not going to write it out because it's just way beyond what we need. And that is the past perfect continuous, present perfect continuous, and future perfect continuous. Present perfect continuous would be something like, I have been walking for 3 years, right? I have been walking. Past perfect would be something like, I had been walking for 3 years. Future perfect continuous would be, I will have been walking for 3 years, okay? So it's basically adding both the continuous and the perfect sense to the tense, and those are the last 3 tenses. Now there's other aspects of verb forms such as mood, so the imperative mood, subjunctive. I may or may not do a video on those later depending on what people say. I mean, subjunctive just doesn't come up enough on the SAT to really warrant that right now. But in any event, let me know what you thought of this. I hope this was helpful. This is really a lot, and tense, to be honest, confuses me sometimes. I most likely made a mistake somewhere in this video, just unknowingly. I mean, I hope not. But tense gives me issues sometimes. It gives a lot of people issues. For the purposes of the test, we just need to really focus on present, simple past, and past perfect. Oh yeah, will and would. So you use will for future tense. You use would for future in the past. So something like, in 1906, John will become president. No, it would be, in 1906, John would become president. And similarly, it wouldn't be, I would go to the store. For future, it'd be, I will go to the store. But this isn't as important as the other stuff up here. Okay, so let me know what you thought of that. If you have any more questions, I will be continually working on tense to try to figure out a good way to teach it. But hopefully this helped.